Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Design Review Board public meeting of May 9th, 2019 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves during the meeting, and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones at this time. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants on any of the applications to be reviewed today, are asked to completely fill out one of the speaker's cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You'll be asked to speak by the board when your case is called. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project in the event of a return for redesign decision by the board must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent hearings. Current DRB agendas are available by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and DRB appeal is available from staff. Roll call. Ms. Arzumanian. Absent. Ms. Boyajian, thank you. Here. Mr. Benlian.
Here.
Mr. Simonian.
Present.
Great. Report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on May 2nd of 2019. Oral communications. Do you have any cards? No. Everybody has a project associated.
Correct.
Okay, great. Staff announcements, we do not have any. We will just roll into the first case at 2641 East Glen Oaks Boulevard.
Thank you, Mr. Kiesel. So we'll start the meeting by we'll have staff present case number PDR number 1831067 2641 East Glen Oaks. So go ahead.
Okay, sure. Good evening, Design Review Board member. The case before you is a Design Review case number PDR 1831067 for a single family resident located at 2641 East Glen Oaks Boulevard. The proposal is for construction of a new 3,253 square foot two-story single family resident and a new detached two-car garage on a 9,820 square foot lot located in the R1 zone floor area ratio district 2. The existing one-story 1,319 square foot single family resident built in 1939 and the detached two-car garage will be demolished. The existing swimming pool, however, will remain unchanged. There are two oak trees on the lot towards the rear property. The trees will remain unchanged on the lot, and the city's urban forestry section supported the proposed project because the construction will be outside of the drip line of both trees with minimal or no impact on the trees. The applicant is required, however, to obtain all required indigenous tree permit prior to building permit issuance. In terms of the site planning of this project, the proposed two-story house and detached two-car garage are consistent with the site planning of the neighboring properties. The proposed house will not alter the site planning of the existing house significantly, and the location of the new two-story house, garage, and driveway will remain almost unchanged. In terms of the mass and the scale of the proposed project, the project is designed in a contemporary Tudor revival architectural style and features a recessed arch entry, projecting two-story bay window at the front facade, steeply pitched roofs, front dormers, a porte cochere chimney, and rear balcony, and minimal setback at the front and side elevation to provide articulation for the building. The massing of the proposed house reinforces an architectural style which is Tudor revival, which has steep pitched roofs. The proposed style is not a common architectural style in the neighborhood. However, the proposed house fits within the context, scale, and proportion of the neighborhood, which consists of 1- and 2-story houses. In terms of the design and details of the project, staff believes that the proposed architectural details and material, including metal siding, brick veneer, wooden corbels, steel gate and railings, primary steel and glass entry door, and overall materials, texture, and colors reinforce the character-defining feature of the proposed Tudor Revival architectural style. Staff recommends a condition for replacing the lap siding with a smooth stucco finish and the replacement of the proposed lap siding at the recessed portion of the wall on the west elevation with the proposed brick veneer for a consistent contribution of the material compatible with the proposed style. The material and size of the windows are appropriate to the style of the house. The new windows will be recessed, aluminum fixed, and casement windows with external grids and brick sills and lintel. Staff recommends a modification to the street-facing corner window to increase the size of the center vertical grid for consistency of style and proportions. There is also a condition recommended by the staff to provide specification and details of the proposed pavers compatible with the architectural style. This concludes my presentation, and the staff is recommending approval for this project with the conditions that I mentioned to you. If you have any questions.
Thank you. I think Mr. Simonian has a question for you.
Yes, in regards to the siding that staff is proposing to be eliminated, I'm having a hard time kind of seeing the material. I'm wondering if, are you talking about this portion over here?
The material itself, what is proposed is siding at the front elevation. You see the siding here at the front elevation?
Yes.
All over?
And then the
So-
middle portion is brick in the front.
Yes. So we are not recommending removal of the brick. We're saying wood siding to be replaced with smooth stucco all over the places and all facade. Only on the west elevation, when you're replacing this portion, covered with veneer, brick veneer that is proposed here in this portion.
Oh, I see. And
So you don't have that like stucco all over the places. You will have one portion which is covered with different
And
material.
at the moment, you have siding, the way it's depicted, you have siding, brick, and I assume this is,
This is going to stay, this is this portion.
which is brick right
Yes.
now? Okay. And when the front window that you were talking about proportionality,
We're talking about this vertical grids. If the applicant can make it wider, just to break down the massing of this window in the front.
So instead of 4, we'll have 3, for example.
Maybe this grid would be pushed back a little just to provide more of like vertical grid. So instead of like having the sense of this is a huge window here, you will see like a breakdown of some square shaped window there.
If you look at how it turns the corner, the idea would be that you would have essentially a repeat of the pattern.
On the rendering, color delineation.
And you want it where it turns, so
Yeah.
to that.
in this portion.
Okay. And the siding, eliminate the siding and go to stucco.
Stucco.
okay, oh, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? So we'll go ahead and open it with Mr. Malikian.
Good evening, Chair.
You look good on that side.
Thank you. You guys look great over there, too. Designer of the project, office is 2255 Honolulu Avenue, Montrose, California. Staff covered the project. I'm not going to get into the overall design, but I want to go over the conditions. So number one, we're completely okay with the stucco. That was one of the options we played around with because it was a contemporary revival, so we tried to incorporate some siding. But at the end of the day, I think it's a plus for our client of the savings that they're going to have, to be honest with you. So I think we definitely agree that stucco is a better way to go. On the second one, The recess along the west elevation, both left and the right of the chimney, it's all in the same plane. So putting in a brick in the middle, it kind of, and it's going on the sides. So if we're going to stucco that, let's just stucco the whole face. That's how I would go about it, rather than add another veneer. All the brick essentially has been designed and placed of volumes that represent certain thing. For example, the corner of the facade or the rectangular main volume that is in the front elevation or in the back around the balcony and so forth. So placing it all against the wall, it's kind of going to defeat the whole purpose of using that material on the face. As far as the mullion, I'm okay with that. What I would do, I wouldn't make that the center mullion the same thickness as the corner. What I would do is I would make the center mullion as thick as the horizontal member and just make the vertical, so it'll be divided into that. As far as the permeable, I have a handout. I've kind of outlined where they are, so staff wanted to get a copy of that. So also have a cut sheet for the windows. Also brought new renderings with the stucco. It doesn't.
Thank you.
So they're pretty much the same because they're all in a white tone. It's kind of difficult to see differentiate the difference, but it's basically it's going to be smooth plaster stucco, as suggested by staff.
Makes sense. Any questions for the applicant?
Yes, the front window, is it an operable window?
No, it's a fixed window over. That's in front of the staircase.
So you'll be able to adjust the size of the
Yeah.
shapes, etc.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. I don't have any other questions.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and we'll open it up for the deliberation. And I will start with Ms. Boyajian.
Yeah, I don't just considerations. I agree with center mullion to make it a little bit thicker,
Okay.
and agree with Mr. Malakian to align to a sticker as horizontal mullions, because yeah, seeing from the side, from the other elevation, proportion horizontal, which provides more rectangular shape divisions. I think that will be very beautiful. And regarding the brick to have on the same plane, I wouldn't change to brick. I will remain stucco in here, because
1 second.
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Let's just check.
I have a feeling they can't hear, because
Okay.
can't hear over here.
If you could speak louder,
Oh, okay.
thanks.
Closer to the
And
microphone.
Yeah.
try to do it toward the mic.
Okay.
Yeah. Or just
So-
shout.
Okay. Regarding the mullion, I completely agree with Mr. Malakamp and with staff suggestion to emphasize vertical mullion and to make it as thicker as horizontal mullion. So that will provide horizontal, that provide vertical rectangular divisions proportionally to each other. And regarding having a brick on the west elevation where we have a chimney, and on the same plane, I wouldn't do that, because it's the same plane to the division portion of the stucco and brick. I don't think it will be very accurate and applying to the style that much, unless if and I think that's it.
Okay, so you're in support of
And
the project?
because we have already pathway materials provided, so I looked at, I think it's here, right? So,
I think it's on this side, yes.
this-
Okay.
yeah, so that's perfectly matching with the style,
Okay.
historical. Mhm.
Thank you, Ms. Boyajian. Mr. Simonian?
I also support the design as well. It is well designed. In fact, it has kind of a fresh look to such an old style. So I think the shapes and the way the entry has been emphasized and the way the verticality of that one piece to the right side of the entryway has been emphasized as well as quite successful. I do agree with staff comments, and it seems as though condition number 1 is okay. It seems as though there's I also agree in condition number 2 that if we make it all stucco, it probably will continue or look fine in that regards as well. And I support the other conditions as well. So overall, I support the project, and it's well designed, and I think it'll be a good addition to the neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Simonian. So I concur with my colleagues. I think it's a well-designed project, as typically we see well-designed projects from Mr. Malikian, so no surprise here. I like the style, and I also agree with Mr. Simonian. I think this kind of architecture, it has some twist to the architecture, where there's some, like, the modern style, the Mr. Malikian modern style, bits and pieces here and there that made it, I think, a nicer and more fresh design. I really like the corner window, by the way. I think it's adding to the space, and it's taking away from the volume. In terms of the conditions, I agree with staff conditions, and I also agree with Mr. Malikian that number 2 probably doesn't make sense, since both are on the same plane, to have like brick and have smooth stucco right next to it, just stucco the whole thing. And I think Mr. Malikian was okay with the rest of the conditions. So I'm in support, well designed, well detailed, and I'll take a vote with the stated conditions and crossing out number 2.
I move to approve the project with the stated conditions by staff, minus number 2. That's the motion.
Any second?
I agree to move.
You second?
Second.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a roll call. Mr. Simonian,
Yes?
Board Member Boyajian,
Yes.
and Chairman Bellion.
Yes.
Motion passed. Thank you.
So we'll go ahead and move to the next case, which is 1507 with Kenneth, and that's PDR number 1906550, and we'll start with staff presentation.
All right, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Design Review Board. The last item before you this evening is case number PDR 1906550. It's a review of a proposal to construct a new 2-story, 2,332 square foot single-family residence and detached 2-car garage in the R1 zone, which has a floor area ratio District 1. The existing single-family residence and detached garage will be demolished as a result of the project, which is located at 1507 West Kenneth Road. You may recall in January of 2018, the Design Review Board approved a 1-story, approximately 750 square foot addition to the existing on-site single-family residence. The applicant received a permit to construct the addition. However, in the process, demolished more than 50% of the house during construction. So their choices were either to consider what they were doing in a new house and bring it back to the board, or what they ultimately decided to do was pursue a totally different design, a new 2-story house, which is what's before you this evening. Staff is recommending that the board return the project for redesign based on a couple different issues. Related to the site planning, staff recommends altering the site plan or reducing the size of the residence such that the street front setback is increased from the currently proposed 32 feet to a minimum of 42.5 feet. If you look at The first row, the most left row, one of the middle plans shows the orientation of the two adjacent houses and the orientation of the proposed house. So last year, when you approved the addition to the house, you approved it with a 42.5 foot front setback, and that's what staff is recommending that you do today, even though the two adjacent houses are set back 54 and 57 feet. So the proposal will even with staff's recommendation, encroach into the sort of prominent setback line. But that's one of our recommendations. A second recommendation is staff recommends reducing the amount of impermeable surface area in the rear yard. And just to clarify, the project does comply with the minimum landscape standards, but particularly the area which is heavily paved between the proposed garage and the proposed residence, we feel could benefit from more landscaping. And then finally, as it relates to site planning, staff recommends eliminating two of the retaining walls proposed in the front yard and reducing the width of the entry stairs to better maintain the natural topography. And you could see that best. You can see that best sort of in the landscape plans on the top, where the stairs widen and there are retaining walls there.
Are you referring to?
Correct. And then the retaining walls on either side. And you can see those a little bit on the elevations, the front elevation. So staff believes, yes, sorry.
Just while we're still on the topic of what you were talking about, when you were saying reducing the hardscaping in the rear, is everything behind the house, all that hatch pattern, is that all paving at this point?
It's proposed as paving.
I see. So
There are landscape areas immediately in back of the garage for a period of time, and then there's kind of a landscape island sort of adjacent to the pool.
I see. So that kind of amoeba shape, kidney shape, just below the pool is a lawn area.
Yeah, it's a landscaping.
Okay. And the rest is hardscape.
And the rest is hardscape.
Is it permeable pavers?
That's a good question. To be honest with you, I don't know.
We can ask Doug.
Yeah.
Okay. And one
So-
last question I have on that.
Sure.
Are they not meeting the landscape requirements percentage-wise? Is that where that comment's coming from?
No, they are meeting it. They are meeting it. Staff thinks the overall site would benefit from more landscaping. And we recommend that a lot when you just have large paved areas without shade,
Right.
et cetera.
Was it supposed to be 25% of the lot?
Well, in single-family residential, it's 40%.
40%, okay. And in regards to the front setback, have conversations taken place to push the house back? Like in its entirety?
Has staff mentioned that to them? Yeah. Mhm.
I see,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And there was resistance, or?
Well, yeah. It's 32 feet now.
Right.
So, at a certain point, we need to take these things to the board. Last year with their project, we had recommended, moving the whole house back to be much more in line with the adjacent houses. And you all said 42 feet was fine. And so that's why we came to the conclusion we came to in the present situation.
And I have one last question.
Go for it.
Is there a prevailing setback on this street at the moment?
Well, yes, there sort of is. The two houses adjacent to the subject property are 54 and 57 feet back. Of the 6 houses, there was one house that encroached into the setback. I forget how much. It was 35 feet or something like that. And that was on the corner. And then I think about a year and a half, 2 years ago, you all approved a house mid-block that encroached significantly, about 30 feet into the prominent setback of the street.
It was immediately adjacent to a corner property.
Which that property was
That
the
property
encroached?
was out further, and the one immediately adjacent to it, you allowed to encroach. And
So-
I think it would be helpful to see.
Yeah, if we could dim the lights so we get a, because what is the prevailing setback on the street? I mean, I'm sorry, what is the setback and what is the prevailing setback? And do we know what it is, like within 300 linear feet?
There are approximately 5 houses, I'm going to say.
There's 6 houses in this block, I believe. I don't think we can dim the lights. I don't think the TV is.
Even like that?
Let's try it and then he'll call.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let them call.
Well, at least we'll see what we're talking about and then
Well,
we
it would
can
give
turn
them
it
a
back
chance
on.
to see it, and
Yeah.
we can put them-
Because it's a fairly important question, so it'd be good to see it.
Wrong side.
I'm getting to it, sorry. Okay. So. That's probably about as as big as I can get it. The subject site is here where I'm sort of hovering the arrow.
Uh-huh.
This is the house that you recently approved that encroached, what was that, about a year and a half ago, Chris, or 2 years ago?
Maybe 2 years ago.
And what
Okay.
was that setback? That seems to be,
This looks like it's about 25 feet.
okay.
This is the house that encroached, that initially encroached into the setback, closer to the street than every other house. And I think this was originally designed that way.
And the one next to it that we approved makes a little more sense because it's right next to the corner
it's
house
right
and
next
it already encroaching.
Whereas this would
Where-
be.
where this is
sticking
right
way
in the
out in
middle.
front of the-
Yeah, no, staff's comment is a good comment.
And this is the only block that has those real deep setbacks on Kenneth for, at least several blocks. I don't necessarily know why this block was developed with houses further back, but it's houses to the south across the street on Kenneth are, fairly standard 25-foot, 30-foot
That's
setbacks.
And is that the setback in this area, 25?
Yeah, for an R1 zone, that's the standard setback.
Okay.
Is that because of the trees, particular trees on the side? Maybe.
You need to talk a little bit louder.
Are there
Are
particular
you asking
trees?
why
Why?
the prevailing
Yeah,
setback
prevailing
has occurred
setback.
over the years?
Oh, to be honest with you, I'm not sure. I'm not sure why this particular block was developed with, 50-foot setbacks. They're decent-sized yards, but nothing horribly huge. I don't know.
Right. And across the street, you have your typical 25.
Standard, yes, standard.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Go ahead and continue, Mr. Keys.
All right, so basically, staff feels the site planning of the site is not compatible to the subject property or surrounding, or the surroundings due to the items that I just mentioned, but particularly related to the front setback encroachment. And that's one of the reasons why staff is recommending that the project be returned for redesign.
Can I ask Mr. Keys
sure.
one question? So is the return, I know typically you guys don't go return for redesign, it's here and there, but is the main reason you're asking for it to go back for redesign, is that the site planning and you guys are okay with the design, or is it other stuff as well?
No, the mass and scale, there are a couple things in the mass and scale, a couple items that I'll highlight in the mass and scale that also mainly contributed to our recommendation.
Okay.
I mean, there's certain things that we highlight, but if it was only that, we would not recommend.
Okay.
in terms of reason.
Got it. Thank you.
There are two main concerns related to the mass and scale of the project. The location of the staircase, which is the first one, sticks out about half a floor above the first floor. And you can see that most clearly on the front elevation as well as the east elevation. So the south and the east elevation. This feature, the staircase, staff doesn't believe really integrates in with the rest of the proposed residence and really creates an awkward south and east elevations. Further, it's an element that really is not consistent with the proposed Spanish-style residence. Staircases are usually either integrated into the design, or sometimes in Spanish houses, they become a tower element or something like that, and this really doesn't fit into either. So staff is recommending that either the location of the staircase be changed or the design of the second floor be amended such that the staircase volume is really fully integrated into the design of the residence, or as an alternative, expressed in a more consistent manner with the proposed sort of modern Spanish style. Along with the staircase roof, the roof form above the main entry to the residence, staff believes is complex and really inappropriately highlights the entry feature. The unnecessarily complex third roof peak, which is located right above the front door, is exacerbated by the fact that the western portion of the proposed residence projects further forward than the house does on the eastern portion. So it's not, the eastern and western wings of the house don't project at the same distance. And so that further, that doesn't, on a two-dimensional elevation, that doesn't read like that, but that's the way it's proposed, and it just adds further complexity to the whole the whole roof plan in that area. So staff is recommending that the roof at the front of the residence be redesigned. And then finally, with regard to the design and detailing, staff generally believes that the design and detailing is appropriate for the residence. We do want to highlight some maybe more modest concerns that we had related to design and detailing. The first is on the front elevation, the living room has a recessed facade, which isn't commonly seen in Spanish-style houses. So the board may consider refining that portion of the front elevation. That's the area where the fireplace is. The second more minor concern is the proposed metal glass and wood door, which you can see in the materials, is generally not consistent with the Spanish-style residence, and staff believes that either a more appropriate style door be used, or if that type of door is really desired, that a more symmetrical design be used as opposed to what they propose now. I did not put the window details up. I can if you'd like. I believe they're in your packet. Staff believes that the actual glazing needs to be set back more from the facade of the residence. And while the plans show the proposed the details shown are not consistent with the plan. So we just need to make sure that the two are consistent. In this style house, we would want recessed windows. It shows recesses as a detail. We'd like the actual glazing, though, to be pushed back more. Another concern, if you notice on the second floor is just composed of the master bedroom suite. It has a large balcony off of that room. As you know, balconies over 25 square feet. Staff needs to look at it from a privacy perspective, and we're suggesting that you consider reducing the size of the balcony just based on its location. Finally, recommending that the new garage door be 7 feet in height as opposed to 8 feet in height, just for better proportionality. So again, in general, the design and detailing we support with just those minor considerations or concerns. I can go over the conditions and considerations if you'd like. Otherwise, I will conclude.
I think we have them. You can conclude, and I think Mr. Simonian has a follow-up question.
I would like to bring up, we did get one letter of concern. It was an email. I think I got it yesterday. That it's on your desk. So,
Thank you.
sure.
Mr. Simonian?
Yes, in regards to the front setback and the possibility of the house, moving back, I noticed that the rear garage has a 20-foot driveway off the alley. Is that something that's required by code?
It is.
And is it 18 feet or 20 feet? Because 18 is...
I believe it's 20 feet in the R1 zone.
And based on kind of the prevailing setback of garages and driveways upon the alley, does staff have any idea what that setback is?
Most of the garages are set back much closer to the alley than what's proposed.
I would imagine that.
And the existing garage that's there is consistent with the remainder of the garages in that.
And would applicant, for example, have the ability to design a new house, let's say, and keep the old garage where it is? Or would
That would require approval of a variance.
Okay, so putting the variance aside, would the reduction of the 20-foot setback require an approval variance as well?
I'm sorry, say that one again?
And in other words, could that 20-foot rear driveway be reduced without a variance?
It would depend on the amount of the reduction.
Is
So
20% up to?
yeah, that would be, if it was 20% or less,
Goes through
that would be administrative exception. More than 20% a variance.
Does this body have the ability to recommend staff to consider less than 20% reduction of that setback in the bigger scheme of things as we're considering what we're doing here?
Not really. Your scope is really design.
And then they got to
So-
go to a separate kind of administrative hearing
Right,
for that?
right.
Okay, thank you.
But I will tell you that the applicant and I have had talks about that, so,
Okay.
yeah. They're aware of alternatives.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kiesel. And we'll go ahead and open the public hearing, and we'll start with the architect, Armin Sgaldu.
Yes.
Good evening, members of the Design Review Board. My name is Armin Sgoli, and I'm the project architect for the design presented before you at 1507 West Kenneth. Mr. Kiesel kind of gave context. I'll give further context as to the history of what we had, kind of what this project went through. This project was approved and the owner proceeded to begin construction. This was approved back in 2018, and originally this was a single-story design, and he was just looking to just do a small addition in the front, and I believe that was approved by the Design Review Board. And during the demolition phase, as Mr. Kiesel mentioned, the contractor that was hired mistakenly demolished over 50%, and then this is noted and discovered by the inspector, so the construction was ultimately halted. At this point, I was introduced to the owner, and we began the process of meticulously kind of calculating, try to understand where that 50% lied, and I believe we went back and forth for about a month. And this is, again, this is at the time where the house is in demolition form. He has moved away, and now he's at renting another property and looking to build this new property to move back in. And the calculation ended up being at 50.75, 51%, around there, so it was very slightly off. We tried coordinating to see if there's any kind of a wiggle room, but obviously by code it's anything 50%.
Sorry, Mr. Kiesel, you have the timer going?
Oh,
No, I don't. Thank you.
There you go.
yeah. So we tried to see if there was any room to try to continue with the single-story design, but per Mr. Kiesel, that it was not allowed. So we had to, our other option was demolishing the property, starting fresh, and we decided because we have to do that anyway, we have to follow within the new development standards, which is 6 feet side setbacks and all the different development standards. I understand the concerns about the front setback, but again, as you guys noted, the two lots, only two houses away are much less than as stated, or that Mr. Kiesel wants from us. So right now, I believe we're at 32 feet, and I think the reason we did that was to create articulation in the design, and our most nearest front setback is 32 feet, and the door is already at 40 feet away from the street setback, and other residences have been approved only about a year and a half ago at 25 feet, and the other one is at 32 feet. So we're not asking for any drastic change to what's already been approved, only in about a year and a half. And it's only a matter of time before the other houses do the same, and we don't want to get stuck at 50 feet, especially with the new development standards that we need to provide the garage 20 feet setback from the alleyway, so it ends up being only 15, 16 feet from the new residence to the garage, which I think is a much worse scenario than actually having 32 feet. So again, to point out, it's 42 feet away from that front property line all the way to the door. And the reason is we created the articulation. The massing forms for the front, this is actually the third or fourth iteration. We went back with Mr. Kiesel, and we did modify quite a bit to end up at this design. And we believe that this was, we tried different ways with two different roof forms, and proportionally it did not make sense, and we believe that this made the most sense in the design. And the stairway itself too, again, we tried different methods, tried implementing within the square footage, but that second story is, again, almost 50 or 60 feet set back, so we are not encroaching at all into the front appearance of that frontage lot for that street. So we believe we're within that design. The other conditions of the retaining walls in the front, we're open to adjusting that and making that smaller, and I believe we just did that to create more of a softer entrance into the land, into the property. But we're open. If it needs to go smaller, we can adjust that. Recessing the windows, I believe we're already at the exterior walls. We're proposing a 2x8, which is a considerable difference from typical standard kind of residential construction, because we want to inset that window far back to maintain the Spanish design. What else? The garage height can be reduced. We're open for modifying that. I believe the two items that we just would like to maintain design is that setback, and we believe that 32 feet, again, that's only one portion. That door is almost 40 feet, 9 inches away from the street front. Again, on the sides, we created articulation. We are open to adjusting the balcony size if it needs be, if that becomes a privacy issue. We're open to adjusting that design if that's part of the condition for approval. And I believe that's it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Armin?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Pardon my reach. You mentioned a 15-foot separation.
Yeah.
Over here, we have a 26-foot dimension. Where was the 15-foot you were referring to?
I was referring to if, by staff's recommendation, to adjust
Understood.
another 10-foot, it would end up being only 15 feet.
Got it. And, you know, as you pointed out, you have an undulating kind of a front facade. If this portion, let's say, as a just hypothetical question, were shifted back and aligned with the entryway, let's say, and now you already have a 26-foot clearance, which is somewhat ample. You know, the rear over here would more or less end up where you are with the columns, and it wouldn't really, let's say, affect your second floor because all this is just roof anyways. Have you considered any kind of a compromise like that, where you're not meeting, let's say, the 42 feet setback, but at the same time you're not losing all the backyard as well?
We've explored different options, but I think we're trying to maximize as much square footage because the owner now that has to demolish the whole property and provide new sanitary.
You could come up if you'd like.
So, looking at this design, we had looked at possibly providing a shift into maybe tucking this further back, and then again, this becomes much more of a tighter dimension that we really do not desire, because if the owner's spending this much money to modify, to get a new residence and to maintain the 6-foot setback, I believe that this was a good design because the Spanish kind of style has usually the front door tucked away, and if we expose that, then it ends up being that the door is more prominent instead of, with this design, is more tucked in. And again, we're trying to maintain that distance. And again, if we sorry, just to cut you off, if we do push that further out, then it ends up being the balcony, and that's more encroaching into that side for privacy issues for this land.
And in regards to the rear setback of the driveway, which at this point is 20 feet, but could be probably decreased with some sort of an administrative review.
Yeah.
It seems like that might solve some of your issues as well.
It could, but we didn't want to risk that because the variance is not, it's not approved.
Not even a variance. I mean, administrative, you don't need a variance for a 20% reduction.
20% reduction for, but again,
20 feet.
Yeah, in other words, 20 would turn to 16.
okay, but it's still 16, that's only 4 feet. If we go 10 feet, that's still
Okay.
very good. I mean, just proportionally, it just doesn't make sense for us to be 16 feet, 15 feet away from the garage, especially if we're building a new residence. And we didn't propose anything like the street, you know, there's the property right here, which is at 25 2. That was approved, and this one's at 32. We're actually 32.6 to this line, and then it's to the door. It's 40'9".
I think what Mr. Simonian is hitting, if this 20 turns to 16 through administrative,
Right.
you gain 4 feet, and you have 26, so that's 30. So if you push it, let's say, another 8 feet, you still have 22 feet, or if you push it 10
Right.
feet, you still have 20
Of course.
feet. 20 feet is decent between the house and the garage.
Understood.
That's what.
Understood, yeah.
But that's fine. We understand
Yeah.
where you're
And
going.
again, it's really, we thought that 32 was reasonable compared to the other lots that were recently,
You got it.
provided design. And because, I mean, we're trying to maintain, the reason we went to a second story is trying to gain as much backyard as possible.
And I think we're fine. You could maybe go
Yeah.
back to the podium. The other question I had, sir, Is the contractor still involved, the original contractor?
No.
That I see.
No.
So he was let go?
He was let go.
Right after the first
Right after.
incident?
Yeah, absolutely.
I have no more questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll call the next speaker, JP.
Good evening. I'm sorry, you're the Design Review Board, yes. I'm 77 years old, and I live in the back of this property, 1315 Sonora. In other words, the back would be north of this property. So I'm a little bit higher, and I can look right into his property.
You're
I
on
see
the other side of the alley?
on the other side of the alley, and I can see the skeletal remains of his house. I've been looking at it now for about 6 months, and well, I'm as I said, I'm 77. I'd like to sell my house. I've been postponing selling my house because I don't know what the candidate buyers are going to react to when they see the skeleton in front of my place. It's not consistent with the other houses that are beautiful in this block that I live in, and it's an aesthetic decision. I just hope that Mr. Bogosian's house gets done before I end up at Forest Lawn. You know what I mean? So I favor whatever he's going to do to get it completed. I'm very happy that he's going to eventually make a beautiful house there, and I hope it happens soon. So that's my only real comment.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Next speaker, Andre.
So I represent my family that lives on the corner of 1501. I've been there for about 30 years.
What's your name for that?
Andre Arzu. We represent the Arzu family. So to begin with, I want to address the garage issue. I think setting it back to the amount that it's set right now is a little bit excessive. The garage, from my understanding, is right up against the alley, so a little bit of a setback is understandable, but if you're taking it that far back, you're essentially forcing them to bring the front yard setback further out. I know that we've talked about the Roberta example. That house is significantly up against, and it doesn't match anything on the block, whether it be on the north or the south side. That Roberta house is way too forward, and I'm afraid now that if we're coming down to about 30, 35 feet, that's going to bring the property excessively to the curb and is essentially going to block the entire east side of our house, or west side if you're looking north. And there are a couple concerns about that. So for example, on the corner, if you look, there is a driveway that cuts through. So if he's extending the front of the house up until 30 to 35 feet, there are the front bedroom windows there. So essentially, anytime we're pulling into the driveway, especially at night, you have the high beams of the car on that side. So that's the first consideration. Aside from that, I mean, this is about a 25-foot extension. I'm thinking 25 feet is very extensive. I'm not opposed to an extension. It's just I feel 25 feet on our side is excessive. But the other side, it comes out to closer to 28 to 30 feet. Now, he doesn't have to come up that much if the garage isn't pushed forward.
Just to clarify something, the 20 feet for the garage is a zoning code. It's not what we requested to be.
Sure, but do you know what it is right now?
It doesn't matter when you're building a new house. You gotta go through the current code.
Sure, but I just want you to understand that by pushing that garage forward,
No, we
pushing the inside front of the house
we
forward.
completely understand that, and that's not. I don't believe we're going in that direction to allow it to come.
So as far as I'm concerned, there's really only one house that's come considerably forward on the front end, the setback to Kenneth. If this continues, I mean, pretty much everything is going to start coming forward. I don't think that's ideally what you want to do, especially if you start going east of Kenneth. They're all set back.
We got it. Thank you.
I'm sorry, one more thing. My only other consideration is I'm not sure if it needs, the height for the roof needs to be as high as it is. I can show you pictures on my phone, but I feel that's a little bit excessive too, because you pretty much lose all privacy. And I don't have a problem with that if my house was the same height, but right now it's not.
Okay.
So essentially, if this was approved, I would have to do the same exact thing.
Okay, we got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Vaughn.
Hi. I'm just here to vouch for Vic. I'm his neighbor. You can actually see my house over there at 1515 Kenneth. I'm only 2 doors down from him. And just to echo what JP said, there's a void in the neighborhood, and it's been there a while. And, I like to, ask you to maybe find it in your heart or in your codes to let Vic, finish his work over there and put the house back up, and then he can move back in. So that's pretty much it. He's a good neighbor, very respectful, and it would be nice if he can just finish this project and get back into the house, and we can beautify our neighborhood again. So that's pretty much it. So.
Sounds good. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you, guys.
So we'll go ahead and close the public portion, and we'll open it up for deliberation. And I'll start with Mr. Simonian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. By the way, I very much appreciate you going through the history, because I was actually going to ask earlier on what percentage did they go over the demolition. And my heart really goes out to you guys, by the way. 50 point something is just so close. It's heart-wrenching. Most of the time when applicants come up and the architects are prescribing such a close percentage, we always warn them. It's not an exact science. You start demoing things, and it's very easy.
Things fall apart.
Things fall apart, and sometimes, you hit the hammer here, and 4 feet over, something cracks and it falls down, and you're like, oh my goodness, I just went over 50%. And so we always warn applicants, and we always caution people when they're that close. And so here we have a live example. I would call this a very difficult scenario where an applicant started, for whatever reason, they went right over 50%, 50% something. The contractor was let go. At that point, they had to start all over again. And what do you do? and you've already had some delays, and you realize that perhaps reducing the rear setback of that driveway would help, but then now you got to go through more processes. You got to go through other hearings, and you got to go through other, whether it's administrative on a 20% reduction or a variance, whatever, it just takes time. And when you're paying a mortgage on an empty home that's sitting there and demolished, it's a tough situation. And so my objective this evening is going to be at least to try to come up with a consensus of some sort of a compromise of some sort that I'm hoping would work for the applicants, so we get this project rolling again, and we start to have the neighbors looking at a construction site that's moving in the right direction as opposed to a stalled construction site. And I think in the spirit of trying to maintain or establish or reach that goal, we need to make some suggestions, see if there's a quorum amongst us, and if there is a quorum amongst us, to direct the designer and staff very precisely of what to do to move forward. That is what I will try to at least do, with some thoughts to see if there's overall agreement here. I do think that the setback could be reduced. I do think that perhaps a 42-foot would have been ideal in the old scenario, but it might be a bit excessive. But at the same time, what we have at the moment might be easily reduced as well, or increased setback, just by shifting the building, either part of it, as we described, or the whole thing. I realize that the applicant probably has some strong desires to have a distance between the garage and the building, but I believe that if there's a compromise in that, and you're able to move forward at least without going through a redesign, which is what staff is suggesting, at the end you'll be pleased, because a redesign, you got to go through a long process again. And so, without getting into the specifics of how many feet here or inches there, I think in general, I would start off by shifting the living portion back towards the entry.
Mr. Simonian, sorry to interrupt. I think it'll be probably ideal if we open it back up and have the applicant or the architect come out and see if they're even open for that option without wasting our time.
Fair enough.
Because if they're not, then everything we say not gonna go anywhere.
I think that's a wonderful idea.
This way, if they agree, then we'll have you draft up
Okay.
the conditions. Can you come up, please? Okay, is the applicant open for that 26 feet to get reduced? or-
Absolutely. Again, our goal, it's just as you beautifully put, is not to go in for a redesign.
Okay, that's
So,
all I
yes.
need, that's all we
Yes.
needed to know. Thank you. I'll
great.
close it again, and Mr. Simonian.
That was a wonderful idea, Mr. Chair, because had we gone through an hour of
Yeah, that's what I
ideas,
didn't wanna
and they
do.
would have just shooken their heads saying no, it would have been a colossal waste of time. So thank you for that great idea. And so, as a possibility, I would suggest for us to consider shifting this portion of the building rear. And by that doing, we're gonna reduce this, or increase this 31 feet by, say, 4 or 5 feet, right there. Certainly 5 feet. So now, instead of a 42, we have a 36-foot setback of some sort, which is reasonable. And you've still maintained your 26-foot rear or 25-foot separation, whatever it ends up being, but you end up losing a porch here, which I think in the bigger scheme of things isn't the end of the world as what your consequences are. And of course, it's not gonna make a big difference in this scenario anyways with the roof. So that would be a suggestion.
That's the first move, and maybe lose a couple more feet from that
That's right.
26, because 26 is...
Yeah, maybe it goes down to 24 or something, or 20, whatever that number is. I would also, well, without even touching the setback at this point, just keeping that. In regards to staff's comments about the stair being more integrated into the building, I think is a good comment, and I think that could be done somewhat easily. In regards to this roof line, once this gets pushed back, I think these two would more or less turn into one roof anyways in this area.
That would get better anyways.
That would get better, and when you're looking at this roof line, if one way or another this stair ends up being integrated into this roof, I think that would eliminate some of these issues as well. In regards to staff's comment about this notch, I agree. I think that could be simplified. I think this chimney could actually pop out, say 6 inches or 8 inches or 10 inches or something, and it would create the kind of emphasis that they're looking for. And with staff's comments of some more recessing in the windows, I think you'll be able to achieve a more meaningful entryway. I mean, front facade. As far as the doors are concerned, I actually like the way the doors are depicted in the elevation. I think that's a nice door. I think it's just a little different than what you have as an actual material. So if you stick with this, I think that works well with the Spanish style. In regards to the retaining walls in the front, I don't particularly have an issue. There's a grade change, and I'd rather do this than have a whole bunch of stairs going up. So I think if this is landscaped nicely, which it has, I don't particularly have an issue with that. I think I'm not particularly interested in really getting into their backyard to create more landscaping if they're meeting code. And oh, by the way, now we're reducing this section. If they want to keep some of this hardscape and enjoy their backyard, I think it's fine because we don't see it and they're still meeting code. So overall, those would be my comments with approval of those kind of conditions would be kind of where I'd be going with this.
Could I ask you to repeat the kinds of setbacks that you were talking about? The front yard, you were saying
I think without starting with a figure in the front yard, but would be shifting the living portion back and aligning it more or less with the current front door location.
Okay.
So that puts you at 40 feet, I think, they said.
Yes,
mentioned.
yeah, whatever that number was.
Yeah.
I think it's in here. And then,
And reduce that 26 feet between the house and the garage
By
to
say-
20 to 24 by 2 feet.
24, that's right. And by shifting the living, you've already eliminated the patio in the rear anyways.
It'll be 5 feet.
And if they want to keep the patio, they could, it's gonna get in the way of your 24 feet. So that's something that you guys could think about. Was that clear?
I'm not quite sure.
Would
So
you-
you're saying to push the living room wall back
Yeah,
in
he
line?
can, he can.
So, your first thing is to push your living room back to the front door.
Okay,
Okay. Your second move is to reduce the 26 feet to 24 feet.
okay,
And that right there is going to significantly increase your front setback. It'll increase it by, it's hard to say, but by certainly 6 feet from where it is right now.
and then whether or not they want to go for an AE is up to them for the garage driveway.
Yeah, we're considering at this point that that's not part of this
Okay.
discussion.
Okay.
Right,
Okay,
you can't.
Correct.
okay.
And then, as far as the roof, were you clear on the roof?
I was clear on that. I think the big decision here is that they push that wall back in line, and how they resolve the rear yard is really up to them. The big move is pushing that front wall back.
But we're saying two things. So we're saying you push this wall and line it up with
Right.
the door.
Right.
But then the whole thing also needs to come back
Right.
2 feet to reduce that.
Right.
So now you gain 2 feet and you gained this, so that gives you another 6-7 feet.
But in doing that push, they may find something else that they.
That's
but
fine.
That will be fine.
Yeah, that's fine. And I think if we know how deep is this,
About
it's
No,
about.
it's less.
No, it's not that, it's probably.
This
This
Mr.
is-
Chair, down here, you can see.
Okay, I'll tell you how we can, if we wanna.
Between
get
this
it.
and
So
the-
three, about 7 feet.
That's
looks
okay,
like.
yeah.
So 7 feet and 2 feet, that's 9 feet, so that takes
So,
you.
so they will
40
have,
feet.
they will maintain the 39, I can't quite read this. They'll maintain the setback of 36.9 on one side.
On the bedroom
No,
side.
but that 36.9 is gonna become 38.9.
Because the house is shifting 2 feet to the rear.
Okay.
So that
okay,
would be, that would be the
okay,
condition, yeah.
Okay. That
That's
was,
the
I missed
simplest way
that
to
part.
do it, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then however they work out the front, I mean, it's up to them, as long as they give us that 38, let's call it 38.
So you want a minimum of 38?
Minimum of
Setback.
38.
Okay.
And then however they work it out, they work it out. I think they have something to say. I'll open it for the last time.
Just to make it easier, I was
Sure.
trying to-
By the way, it's very rare for Mr. Chair to open up the hearing
Oh.
twice, so I hope you appreciate that. He's trying to help you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for accommodating. I was just trying to make it easier for you guys. We would look at just shifting to create that same design because it would be easier to maintain that nice articulation, and it would further push it back. I think we're open to adjusting that another 5 feet.
If you get to the 38, we're good.
Okay.
So in other words, he doesn't want to shift the living room, he wants to shift
That's-
the whole house
It's
back
his,
7
his
feet.
decision. As long
Yeah.
as he gives us the 38, we're good.
The one thing, though, about shifting just the living room back to be in line with the entryway is that the roof design
I was
is
gonna- right.
rethought, which was one of our more major concerns.
Oh, wait, so,
Close it.
close it.
Okay, we'll close it and then
Yeah.
we'll go.
Sorry, can I rebuttal?
Just 1 second. Go for it, Mr. Simonian.
So, Mr. Chair, I think it's an interesting situation because if the house is being just shifted, let's say 6-8 feet back, whatever it is, to give those prescribed setbacks that we just described, then of course we still have to deal with the roof,
Yes.
and we still have to deal with the entrance.
Correct.
And so, in essence, we then need to and I'm thinking of a way to craft the conditions. One approach would be to prescribe minimum setbacks in the front that they need to meet, and then provide conditions as to how to deal with the entryway and how to deal with the roof, etc. And if they're able to meet both those by shifting it one side and not shifting the whole building, then they could probably meet conditions that way as well. Do you see what we're saying, Mr. Keating?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I'll give it to you. You draft it.
That's what we try to avoid doing, right?
Yeah. In this circumstance, I think we have to.
I think so. And in order to really facilitate moving this along, I think tonight here we need to have some concise conditions.
Typically, we'll send you for redesign to see all the changes that you're gonna make, and then you're gonna come back. But that's gonna.
It's going to elongate the
It's
matter,
gonna
and I think
elongate
we
the-
could solve it this evening. I'm confident we could come up with some ideas.
And you have Mr. Kiesel as staff, so he'll take care of you. So yeah, that's
Yeah, so we'll see what others have to say.
okay. So
I'm like holding my breath.
okay.
But meanwhile, this moment I saw this project and saw the problems, I started
Just talk to
sketching
the microphone.
sketching and drafting ideas to reduce the, not to make a hard work for you. As an architect, I understand that it's really vulnerable situation to redesign project which you like. So, and by Mr. Simon, I completely agree. I was literally repeating your thoughts meanwhile by sketching here and literally aligning living room wall with the entry. Only thing I'm very afraid of losing the emphasis to the entrance. So by aligning the roof with the entry portion, I have an idea what if we will little popping out the entrance instead of recessing it, just to have little emphasis to the entrance as a separate unit, which is very common to Hispanic style. So it's an idea we can discuss if you want. And then agree also by pushing back, and I see here we have option before the column 5 feet. So, and with the exterior side of the column will be 6. So kind of losing porch here, but you can recreate porch behind that. So I think we will not damage setback very much. And then regarding the landscaping, I was looking at the landscape carefully. They have trees over there, which will create beautiful shading, particularly in their sitting zone. So I think I'm fine with the landscaping portion they have. And yeah, the rest is, as you suggested, my only consideration is not to lose the emphasis for the entrance. I like the door design currently you have. And regarding retaining walls at the entrance, I think it will be better to reduce one row of the wall to just maybe at the very end, just to provide a slope landscape here.
Or in other words, getting rid of the first garden wall and doing more of an upslope.
More the upslope landscape to
Okay.
to softly merge with the walkway.
Okay. That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Boyajian. I as well agree with Mr. Simonian. I feel for the applicant. I feel for, 50 point something is, I don't know, that inspector must feel horrible. Anyways, so we're trying to. It's a little tougher than what it looks like, because when you're trying to prescribe doing certain things, it affects other things, and then we're trying to approve something that we're not going to see again. But obviously, we trust the architect and staff to work it out. I think I think where Mr. Simonian was going with this, I understand it's easier for the applicant and the architect just to take the building, push it back, and then be done with it. That's the easier solution, but we're not looking for the easier solution. We're looking for what's gonna basically eliminate most of the conditions that staff had put on the project. Because most of these conditions, you have like, I think 9 conditions, most of them are very valid. And when you address every single condition, you're gonna end up with a much better home and a much better design. So I as well will support some kind of conditioning where we maintain a minimum front yard, but then we still have to address the rest of the comments. So if you're shifting the whole thing, that's not gonna solve it, because you're still gonna have to solve the entryway, you're still gonna solve the roof issue, you're still gonna solve design and detail is okay. I agree with staff, you're almost there. Some tweaks here and there, we can get there. But the main parts, it's obviously your mass and scale and your volumes and how you treat those elements. And Mr. Simonian suggestion of just pushing maybe the living area and that kitchen, sliding that back and lining up with the entryway, I think that's going to solve, I think, multiple conditions if you do that. And we're not asking you to lose square footage, or we're asking you to just shift that. Think of it as this is a volume and this is a volume. And right now you're taking this volume, and as is, you're just sliding it back, line up here. I think with doing that, it's going to help you solve the entryway, and it's going to help you solve the roof. That's going to take care of the front. And then you still have the same square footage. Yeah, you lose some area in the back, but something gotta give. You can't have everything. Other than that, I'm in support of, I think if we can condition it in a way, and I'm gonna give Mr. Simonian that task since he started with it. If we can condition it in a way where it's very clear and there is no room to go sideways, we can approve it with those conditions. And yeah, you want to give it a try, Mr. Simonian?
Sure, I will try, and I could certainly use help doing it as well.
No, we're here to.
And so I think
Maybe
the idea
staff
that,
can help us as well.
and just, we were going to reduce 2 feet from the rear, and then we were adding, say, another 6 feet from the front, and so it was more or less 7 or 8 feet that we were adding.
Correct.
And so it's really, we're talking about a 7 to 8 foot shift.
Correct.
And that could be accomplished by either shifting the living portion and reducing the rear separation, or it could be accomplished by shifting the whole house down and then also addressing
And then
some.
rework that, yeah.
And so perhaps we could say, reduce the separation between the house and the garage down to 24 feet. Increase the front setback by an additional 6 feet. Said modifications can be accomplished by either shifting the entire house down as depicted, or a combination of shifting the living portion back 5 or 6 feet and shifting the entire home down an additional 2 feet based on the rear
Correct.
reduction of separation.
Correct.
I believe that
That
Did you
takes
say
care.
that very last piece? You said shifting the living portion down an additional
and
6
aligning
feet.
it with the front door.
Okay.
I assume you'll add that. So that gets us to 6 feet.
Correct.
And then there's another 2 feet that you're gaining by reducing the rear separation between the house and the garage from 26 down to 24 feet, and that, you would shift the whole thing down.
By 8 feet from whatever is proposed today.
Yes.
I don't necessarily think we need to worry about prescribing a depth dimension of the backyard or between the house and the garage. I mean, ultimately, the homeowner may say, yeah, I'll just lose some square footage. I really want the backyard to be the distance it is.
Fair enough.
So,
So then we're saying, okay, but in that scenario, let's say we just increase the front setback by 8 feet. And
Yeah.
leave it at that.
Yeah.
Do we want to, but they have 3 different front setbacks. I mean, they have the front door, they have the east side, and they have the west side.
I had originally modified that condition to read, alter the site plan or reduce the size of the residence such that the street front setback of the proposed residence is a minimum of 38 feet.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that.
That's how I had originally, and then,
That gives them more flexibility.
right, and then afterwards I said, consider shifting the living room, dining room, kitchen wing of the house toward the backyard, or shifting the entire house back.
That's fair. I think that's a good way to do it.
Okay.
So can I challenge something there? Well, right now, they have a small portion that projects out the bedrooms. That's a small portion that is projecting out to 36 something. And so we're saying increase that to at least 38 feet,
Correct.
so that that dimension is 38 feet. But the intention is not that the entire house end up out at that 38 feet. It's that,
No, the intention is that the entire house,
Okay.
when all said and done, would have a 38-foot clear at its most encroaching
okay.
portion.
Because I could see that if they come back with a redesign and so forth, you know, that we don't want to see the entire house out at that point.
Flat
We want to,
facade.
we don't want to see a flat facade. We want to see an offset there, as they had proposed.
Okay.
That's,
And I think we could deal with that with condition number 2, where it would be, redesign the entry and the entry roof while providing some sort of a relief from the rest of the facade or something that I think you could integrate into that condition.
Okay.
So whether it pops out or in, it creates some sort of an entryway.
Yeah, we don't want to prescribe it and tell them
Right.
exactly what
No,
to do. It's
no.
going to be up to them
Right.
to.
But we agree with staff's comments that the roof form needs to be better integrated.
right.
No, it's a good comment. And then number 3 is easy. I mean, it's
Yeah.
straightforward.
Keep it as is. I
had eliminated
don't think
4.
there was support for number 4,
Yeah,
so we eliminate condition number 4.
unit 4.
In 5, I just amended, eliminate one of the retaining walls in the front yard, based on a comment.
Yeah. I think what, are you referring to these retaining walls? Because I think.
Yes.
My colleague was referring to this retaining wall, not these guys.
Oh, no, I was referring to the 3 retaining walls that are parallel to the.
These
the
guys.
street.
I see.
We would also tend, I mean, by our standards, we would tend to eliminate the flared
As
well.
much as you can, correct.
Well, that was part of the,
But the flare is, I don't particularly have a problem with the flare, but I think there was a consensus of removing the bottom garden wall
Correct.
and then just sloping up, but I think the flare is fine to have a nicer entrance like that.
Okay.
Larger.
so eliminate that portion of the condition and amend it to state, eliminate the retaining wall
Bottom
closest
garden
to
wall.
The bottom.
The bottom?
Bottom garden wall closest to the curb and just slope up. That way you still have the round entry
Maybe high
stairs.
curb.
Okay.
Number 6, you can keep as is. That,
Well,
that-
I had said the design of the front door shall be the same as that shown on the elevation.
correct.
Is that, okay.
Number 7,
I think the applicant was okay with a 7-foot garage.
yeah, that could stay as is. And number 8,
Are they, I mean, currently they have wood sills, et cetera, and wood surrounds on these windows from what it seems.
Yeah, I believe so.
And so, when you're saying greater recess, can you elaborate on that? Because, I mean, I saw some recess in these drawings already.
Right, there is some recess. We just felt like additional recess would be better.
I'm kind of.
Is that the sheet that has the window detail on it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's this. Yeah, they have a window detail sheet. I don't know. what it
I'm fine with what's proposed.
is. Okay. So maybe eliminate number 8. Condition
Okay.
number 8. The window above the front entry on the second. And I think condition number 8 is going to sort, is it
Number
what,
9.
9? Is going to sort itself out as the front is.
When you go to, yeah.
Okay.
So eliminate 9,
Correct.
and then what about the 3 considerations?
But 9, we're not eliminating. We're thinking once you redesign the front.
Oh,
entry,
got it,
it's-
I'm
it's
So
sorry.
combine with number 2, really.
Combined with number 2.
Okay.
It's a very good comment. Staff did an excellent job taking apart this project.
All right. Thank you.
Consideration.
So reducing the size of the balcony, I don't have a particular issue about the rear balcony. And I think, I'm fine keeping that as a consideration.
Okay. Knowing that if it's a consideration, they don't need to change it.
That's right.
Okay, fine.
Number 2, redesigning street front. We already talked about that. Number 2.
So are we eliminating number 2?
Yeah, I mean this is a condition now, right?
Yeah. So we're eliminating number 2.
There was a reference to bringing the fireplace out a little bit more within that elevation
Oh,
or within that facade.
I'm okay either way.
I'm okay keeping that as a consideration.
Yeah.
And if you choose to do that, you do it.
Okay. And then finally, actually, this last consideration we didn't even talk about. Consider reducing the plate height of the first floor bedroom 1 and 2 and associated bathrooms to vary the roof height and reduce mass. This may also accomplish proposed condition number 2. So that's on the other side of the entry, the bedroom wing, reducing the plate height, which would in turn reduce the.
What are they proposing?
I'm inclined to not have that in there and just tell them to work on what we've already prescribed.
Yeah.
Because this is already a consideration, but
I'm leaning towards like eliminating this condition.
I am too, yeah. I mean, they're considerations
They're
anyways, but
considerations.
we'll get rid of them, yeah.
But you want to maintain the first 2 as considerations.
I'm okay at making them a consideration, but I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
1 and 2 leave and
Okay.
just cross number 3.
And they
So-
stay as considerations.
I guess I do have a question for you. With condition number 3 and the location of the staircase, Do you want to just leave it open like that? Do you have some suggestions? What do you think? Because it's kind of an open-ended, location of the staircase shall be changed, or the design of the second floor shall be amended such that the staircase volume is fully integrated into the design of the residence. So, if you don't have maybe more specific thoughts, then Chris and I will.
I was thinking we leave it open for you guys to work it out with them.
Okay.
But keep it as a condition, they need to address it.
Right,
Because
right.
We have an issue with it now, but we don't want to prescribe what you do with it, because once they start shifting their design and the front, and things might change, and
Okay.
we don't want to put it in a way where it ties your hands.
But our intention will be to try to get it a little more integrated.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Are we comfortable with that, Chris?
We will do our best to work with the applicant to get all of these
Integrate.
issues. We also have to have agreement from the applicant to work with us.
Oh, absolutely. And if they don't, and if you can't reach the conditions, then you're going to
Then we
send them
just
back
bring
here.
it back.
Yeah,
Which is what we'd like to avoid. But
yes.
Okay.
They'll be open, they agreed to it.
All right, so I think we've nailed down the conditions and considerations. Is there a motion?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I'll make a motion. My colleague has some comments on the stair. She was saying, as you know, staff could maybe consider pushing it out 4 inches instead of it coming in 4 inches, if that works with the setbacks. I don't know if that encroaches into your setback.
Just a little.
Oh, okay.
And that way you don't have the funky roof on each side of it.
Right, okay, so it projects toward the neighbor's property 4 inches.
Couple inches.
Okay,
As a
that's something
thought.
that,
It becomes like a tower. for the-
Right,
where it's-
right.
Which is common for the
Right.
Spanish style.
right.
But we didn't want to prescribe it because we want to give the applicant.
As an idea.
Yeah.
Yes.
As an idea.
But because functionally, it's located very well in the floor plan. I don't find any other spot to place it.
Okay.
It's closer to bedrooms, so it's function is perfect to me.
Okay.
Do we want to
Yeah.
repeat the conditions, or
If Mr.
are you
Keys is
comfortable with them?
comfortable?
I think we're pretty comfortable. I am. Are you, Chris?
Yeah, I think after we got through the first one
Yeah.
and we established that, I
Yeah.
think we're okay.
Good, then I move to approve the project with the conditions as stated and as added.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Okay, a motion was made to approve the project with conditions. This will be a roll call. Mr. Simonian,
Yes.
Ms. Boyajian.
Yes,
And Mr. Benlian.
Yes.
Great. Motion carries 3-0. Our assistant Manoush notified me you have no minutes tonight, so we don't have anything else on the agenda.
So,
Right.
I move to adjourn.
Sorry. One thing. No, because I.
Okay, okay.
Okay,
Move to
Mr.
adjourn.
Adjourned.
thank you.